Hi there, I'm Adam Leventhal. Welcome to the preview on the Athletic FC, going deep on the biggest game of the week and getting you ready for all of the Premier League action. Our main focus this week is, of course, Manchester City against Arsenal on Sunday. Joining me is Tim Spiers and John Mackenzie. Tim, what's been your highlight of the week, apart from sitting here?
I was going to say, it's about to happen, but the second highlight, I've been on sort of Champions League duty this week. We do like a bit of a briefing roundup on the Athletic for all the night's action, and it was good fun. I mean, Tuesday night was insane because your job is to kind of sum up what happened, and there were 28 goals in 8 games, and a 9-2 win, and some amazing storylines and incredible goals. De Bast for Sporting hit my favourite goal of the week. De Blast from De Bast.
Very good, very good.
Put in the article. You can read that on the Athletic. I quite enjoy the new format. I think it's good in the Champions League. I think it's going to peter out with too many games, and there'll be lots of irrelevant stuff at the end. But I like it for now. I think it opens things up.
Same page.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all like new things. So at the moment, we're quite positive. I think the only thing, the criticism I have is that it sort of devalues like winning and drawing. I don't think anyone sort of knows what a win or a draw is worth. So City drawing with Inter.
I think there is a way that you can work that out.
No, but in terms of right now, you look at the table and it's like it's 36 teams in a.
What does it mean,
in a
John?
List. And you look at it and you're like, is this good or bad? I mean, Celtic are second. They're not going to finish there, are they? And the teams that have drawn that you would expect to have won mid-table. We're not going to know what the table means until quite late on. And so it just feels like these are random...
Classic reviewer talk, this is. He likes data to get into, but one game is just not enough for this guy.
Even I think in the last game week, so in game week 8, we're going to have a table of 36 teams, and there's going to be a whole host of games, and all of those positions are going to move around as well, right?
It's going to be carnage. I'm looking forward to that already. That's going to be carnage that last weekend. Last week.
Okay, so Tim's embracing the carnage of the Champions League. You want something a little bit more straightforward.
I like it. I just don't know what it means.
I have something.
I don't know what it means.
I have something for you.
Oh,
let's concentrate on the Premier League, shall we? Okay. And let's just take you through the fixtures for this week. 8-2 split over the 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday's early game is West Ham against Chelsea. That's 12:30 UK, 7:30 Eastern. Then we've got 6 3 o'clocks or 10 a.m.s. Villa Wolves, Fulham Newcastle, Southampton Ipswich, Tottenham Brentford, Leicester Everton, Liverpool Bournemouth. And then the 5:30 or 12:30 is Palace against United. Sunday, we've got Brighton, Nottingham Forest at 2 p.m. over here, 9 a.m. in the States Eastern. And then it is Manchester City against Arsenal at 4:30 or 11:30. And we've got loads to come on all of the games. And we'll have plenty of expert analysis from the guys in the studio and across the Athletic FC podcasts as well. So it is Manchester City in first against Arsenal in second on Sunday. So last season, it was 1-0 Arsenal at the Emirates with a late winner from Martinelli, then 0-0 at the Etihad. So 4 points for Arsenal, but City still won the league by 2 points. And City's lead right now over Arsenal after 4 games is also 2 points. Arsenal, one of only 3 teams to beat Manchester City last season. And yes, we are only 5 games in, Tim, but it is really important with that context in mind for them to at least make a mark and ensure that it doesn't become a 5-point gap.
I didn't realise till you just said that they are already the top 2. I like John, pay little attention to the early league tables.
Well,
but yeah, it's set up, really nicely. And I guess from an Arsenal point of view, it's important not to lose, but it's also important. I think Arteta will want to see like another sort of step in their evolution. If you look at the last 2 visits they've had to the Etihad in the league, they took that thrashing a couple of years ago. Was it 4-1 when long ball City destroyed them, and the gulf in teams was so evident at that point. And then last year, you could probably still see the gulf between the team because of the way that Arsenal approached it, basically playing for a 0-0. But there was also title states, as John might put it at the time, when a point was good enough to keep them in charge of the title race. Obviously, it was that Villa game that ultimately cost them. So, this year, can they take City on? I think they probably can, but I don't think they will. I think their approach will be really interesting. But we've seen a bit of a blueprint from Arsenal in recent weeks that's evolved over quite a few years now, and they're really perfecting this sort of defensive steel. It's very impressive. And then you saw how Inter could have beaten City in the week, and probably should have beaten City in the week with again a really good low block and some excellent counter attacking. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's becoming a bit of a sort of a traditional sort of title rivalry now. This is sort of the third season in a row that we're expecting them to challenge each other for the title, and it's a sort of but it's still Master v Apprentice in terms of the managers and in terms of the teams, until we see more from Arsenal in terms of taking City on.
Let's talk about Arsenal's approach, because obviously preparation for such a big game is at a premium this week, with obviously the Champions League game on Thursday away from home. How will the game plan differ against Manchester City than it may have been against Tottenham in the North London derby and then Atalanta?
Well, I think we should mention that Spurs are missing a lot of particularly midfielders. Every time I talk about Arsenal recently, I've been upbraided by people in the comments for not clarifying that Arsenal are in fact missing players. So they wouldn't choose to defend maybe quite so extensively as they have done in recent weeks. So that's the context. They're missing Martin Odegaard through injury. They're missing Mikel Merino through injury, and that is affecting the kind of football that they can play. In terms of what we saw from the North London derby, we saw a team who were happy to spend long spells without the ball. Particularly in the first 30 minutes, I thought that Spurs were able to build through, and it meant that Arsenal was sitting in quite a low block at times. And clearly, by the end of the first half, Arteta wasn't happy with that. He didn't want to just allow Spurs to have the ball and try and break them down, although they did a very good job of not really causing any problems for themselves, Arsenal, in that low block situation. And so they did start pressing up a little bit higher in the second half of the first half, if that's not too confusing a phrasing. But yeah, it's very much based around similar principles to what we saw from Inter, right? It's like you sit low, you absorb pressure, and then you have routes to goal from there. Albeit, I think that Arsenal will be attempting to control the game themselves more than Inter were, because Inter were just happy to sit and go on the break. Against Atalanta, it was slightly different, slightly more interesting, because Atalanta are just a different kettle of fish. So they're very, very man-oriented out of possession. And the way that you play against teams that are man-oriented is that you try and introduce as much flexibility as possible. So we saw a lot of flexibility in Arsenal's build-up. So just players moving out of the positions you might expect them in, and players filling in for them. They brought on Calafiori towards the end, and again he's played in Thiago Motta's system at Bologna, where there was lots of flexibility, and he can push forward out of, I think he was playing left back, he was playing centre back for Bologna, but he has the ability to just move into different lines in build up and cause a little bit of flexibility. Whether or not we're going to see that from Arsenal going forward, I don't know. Like I say, the context was Atalanta very man to man, and if in those scenarios you want to move around a lot, because it just pulls that structure around. But I suspect what we'll see against City will be more similar to the North London derby, setting up to not give anything away, try and maximise your efficiency from set pieces, and then hitting on the break. And I think it suits Arsenal quite nicely, that kind of play. We know that they're pretty much in their out of possession first era. They want to make sure they don't give away chances, to give themselves a platform to generate chances from, and then in as we saw in the North London derby, all you need to do is make sure you take your chance when it comes along, and you win the game 1-0. So that'll be what they're going for. It might be a slightly different prospect, I think, because City do have De Bruyne out, but last time around, I think City were missing Rodri, weren't they, for the loss? That was at the Emirates. And they had a few other players out as well, whereas this looks like a fairly strong City team. So I think that City will be going for it in this one. So, but in the last few iterations, as we've seen, it's just cat and mouse. One manager's like, here's the weakness that I can see in the opposition's structure, let's aim for it. And the manager of the other team recognises, we've got a weakness in our system, let's plug it. And so they plug it and create a weakness elsewhere. And then the other manager's like, there's a weakness elsewhere, let's try and it was just that back and forwards for a lot of the time. And I think that was the game, right, the 0-0, where everyone was like, Guardiola and Arteta have ruined football, haven't they? So I'm expecting probably similar discourse this weekend, especially if the game ends 0-0. But it will be very tetchy. It will be very, I would rather draw than lose this game, because it's a 6-point swing, right? Either way, like you say. If Arsenal do lose, it's 5 points already. on City, and it's that you already start thinking, well, is that them out of the race? And yeah, Guardiola would be happy to take a draw and stay ahead of Arsenal, even if it means other teams catch you up. So yeah, it's the reality of these sort of tetchy title race fixtures, I think.
Yeah, the fact that it is so early in the season, you've got so much more time, you think, to make it up.
Yeah.
But it is obviously worth remembering the fact that City do not lose games. Obviously, Arsenal didn't lose many games last season either, but City only losing 3. Let's talk about Erling Haaland. 9 goals so far in the Premier League. At this stage of last season, he only had 6, so he's, as we know, going along great guns. Didn't score against Inter. Didn't score against Arsenal last season in 2 clean sheets. I almost feel a little bit silly saying this because it's sort of doing a disservice to the rest of the Man City side. But if you stop Haaland, do you stop City?
I guess the point is to stop the supply line, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's not going to. What did he touch the ball 14 times in the week against Inter? My favourite stat of the season so far is that he's scored more goals than any other Premier League team.
Yeah, it is good.
It's fantastic, isn't it? So yeah, if anyone can stop him, as Arsenal have proved, it can be them. They've conceded 1 goal so far, Arsenal, from 5 matches, despite having a difficult start. They played Villa, Brighton, Spurs, Atalanta away, still only conceded 1 goal. So yeah, obviously the key is going to be stopping that supply line. Those balls over the top that he's scored a couple of goals from this season, you wouldn't expect Arsenal to sort of fall victim to that. But those cutbacks and crosses, again, they defend so well as a unit, and they restrict space so effectively. That if anyone can stop them, it's Arsenal. I'm really sort of warming to Haaland as a sort of a character and a person, though. I think he might be my favourite Premier League player at the moment. Like, obviously, for the numbers, it's just been like, wow, eyes wide open, this guy's astonishing. But he's becoming quite likeable, I think. Do you remember when he was at Dortmund and he would just give those sort of one-word interviews, and it was like, this guy's a bit aloof and maybe he's a bit of an arrogant so-and-so. But now he's quite cheeky now, I think, and his little skirmishes with defenders, and he's quite funny. I could see him having sort of his own show at some point in the future.
He looks very happy in his own skin, doesn't he? And it's showing in his performances.
And nothing will be, it's the Louvre as well. That's great content.
Yeah. In terms of City and their potential weaknesses, and it's all very, very sort of hypothetical, really. They've gone behind early in their 2 Premier League games at home so far this season. Is that something that Arsenal should be targeting, sort of being slow off the mark and things like that, or is that just potentially, if you then go all in early, you're going to leave something open that City can exploit? Yeah,
I mean, we've already talked about it in the last few games. Arsenal have had to play a way that they wouldn't ideally want to play, which is sitting a little bit deeper and then trying to hit on the break. One because they went a man down against Brighton, and then obviously the North London derby, they didn't have the personnel to do other things. So I think that actually suits them in a lot of ways. I think they have the personnel to do that. I think Kai Havertz has been fantastic this season as a hold-up striker, often having to feed off scraps. And, it isn't the kind of striker that you expect a team like Arsenal to have. And then you've got Bukayo Saka and to a lesser extent Martinelli, but both of them are going to operate really well in those kind of situations. We know that Manchester City are set up to try and squeeze opponents into their final third, slowly break them down over time, and then defend those big spaces behind them. But Arsenal are going to be able to play in a way that actually really suits them to take those sorts of moments by the scruff of their neck. So it's a sort of funny situation because I feel as though, to a degree, Arsenal actually suit playing this kind of underdog football at the moment. They might not want to play that in most games, but because of circumstances, they can go out now and play in that way. And those are the sorts of teams that hurt City. So, yeah, I think that in many respects, it's a game that will suit them and the way that they're playing. But the big question is whether or not City are able to just control the game and just cut off any of those sorts of dangerous counterattacks and actually, pick up their chances where they come. But I think it'd be fascinating from that point of view because you don't often see really elite sides playing that low block and counter against City, with the exception of the 2 teams they've had in a row now. So
I think John makes a really good point there about Arsenal sort of being so effective in the underdog style. Like, I don't worry about them for this game. And Spurs away, they've gone and won. Pretty much any big team they can take a point off or beat. It's the games against West Ham at home like last season or Fulham or whoever else. It's those games come winter time that are tight, where I think they're still lacking a goal scorer to get them out of trouble, where they might come up short. But in terms of these big games, they're right there. I don't worry about them at all.
Let's get a quick take from Amy Lawrence, who was in Bergamo for the 0-0 draw against Atalanta on Thursday evening, where Arsenal were very, very thankful to one man in particular.
Raya's double save was extraordinary. He stopped the penalty diving one way and then agile, fantastic response to spring up and go the other way to scoop out the header on the rebound, and it's made for a very useful away point in a difficult game, in a difficult week. Arsenal will be hoping that this is the second of 3 clean sheets this week. Another one would do nicely on the weekend.
Only one conceded so far this season for Arsenal, and that was against Brighton when they were down to 10 men. And he stepped up a number of times, in normal situations, just in the normal flow of games, David Raya. Where do you rank him? And I don't know if you like rankings or not, but just humour me. But where do you rank him in terms of Premier League goalkeepers at the moment?
I mean, I don't do rankings. I also don't do goalkeepers. So this is
God.
Whether or not this is going to be insightful in any way, I have no idea. But I mean, I think I still would probably have someone like Alisson as the top goalkeeper.
So what does Alisson have that Raya doesn't?
I mean, I think I was saying this to my friends the other day. I've never seen someone say the word calmer as a goalkeeper and look less calm than I have David Raya. I saw him playing quite regularly at Brentford, and he does seem to have a little bit of a potential for flappiness. Now, since he's been at Arsenal, not at all.
Well, he's evolved, hasn't he? He's evolved after that first season when he had, off the field battles with Ramsdale. Had to establish himself. He looks like with Haaland.
Well, at the moment, he looks unbeatable.
Yeah.
And he's had like the double save against Villa, the double save against Atalanta, and he's certainly, I think, actually carrying Arsenal's defence quite a bit at the moment, because we can talk all we want about them only conceding 1 goal. They should have conceded more according to the underlying numbers, and obviously that that fluctuates. And teams who defend better, lower than their underlying numbers, are usually often carried by a good goalkeeper. I guess the question for me is whether or not it's going to be consistent. What happens when there is inevitably a moment where there's a wobble? How does he come through that? But yeah, I mean, it's worked out perfectly for Arsenal, despite the fact that it all kind of came out of this context of like, we're going to rotate goalkeepers. Actually, they were just improving their goalkeeper, and at the moment it's looking fantastic for them. Yeah.
Where does Raya rank for you then?
The most informed keeper, I think, but
Yeah.
not. He's got a bit more to do to prove he's the best in the league. Like, he's not up there with your Alissons, your Edisons, your Sam Johnstons. The real cream of the crop.
Yes, quite. Yuri and Timber's made a big difference for Arsenal at left back. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's like a new signing because he wasn't around. But it's plugged some doubts at left back that they did have in terms of a potential weakness there.
Yeah, I mean they used 3 or 4 players there last year. Kivior was sort of first choice left back at a crucial stage of the season last year, so that was an obvious weakness for them to sort of pinpoint. And yeah, I've got to say the fact that he's recovered from this horrific injury and sort of seamlessly slotted into the best defence in the world, as John would say. But yeah, I think it was his first 90 minutes last weekend, so there's probably still more to come from him. But he looks great. He's great in 1v1s. He's very combative. He's technically sound, and seems to have already sort of struck up a good partnership with Gabriel, and sort of not leaving him exposed, which is important. So yeah, their defence is just, it's just an absolute machine.
Helping that defence, sitting in front of that defence, will be Declan Rice. I mean, in terms of their offering as a team, how much of a difference does he make to when he's not there?
Yeah, it's important for them, yeah, from a defensive point of view. I think we saw in the North London derby that Arsenal came out in a sort of 4-4-2 shape, 4-2-4 shape. I think that they'll do that again. They'll bring in Rice for Jorginho, so they'll have Rice and Partey in the midfield. And yeah, we've talked about this seemingly every week last season, but he's the best defensive player in that capacity in that part of the pitch. You put him in front of that defence and they're even more solid. So he just covers large spaces really well. Whether or not he'll have to be doing that against Man City is a different matter. They'll probably spend a lot of time in their sort of 4-4-2 block shape. But yeah, they're a better team with him in it, especially in a game like this where they are going to have to be absolutely flawless defensively if they're going to come out with a win.
Manchester City got an extra day's rest after their 0-0 draw against Inter Milan. Here's our City writer, Sam Lee.
I thought that was a pretty good game between two very good teams, kind of contrasting styles, probably more contrasting styles here than we'll see at the weekend when Arsenal come to the Etihad. And to be honest, I think everybody has still got March's Stinkfest in mind. The 0-0 here between City and Arsenal, when Arsenal were happy to sit in. They didn't do too much counter-attacking. Obviously, with this being 0-0 as well, it doesn't seem to bode particularly well. There was the promise of goals here. City obviously had a few chances at the end. Inter definitely had two breakaways that should have ended in a goal. Will Arsenal carry that kind of threat this time? Will, like here, it actually matter? Obviously, it feels like an important game here, because Inter and City are big teams, but obviously there's so many games in this group stage of the Champions League, it's probably not going to matter too much. And as we saw with Arsenal beating City early last season, that didn't really matter either. But that said, if you are thinking of watching a game, please do. Just maybe don't have your expectations especially high, but I'll be here and I'll probably enjoy it.
So Sam's not feeling particularly enthusiastic, especially considering both sides have had a 0-0 and then there was a 0-0 last season as well. It doesn't necessarily, add up that, we've had two 0-0s, there was a 0-0 last time and it's going to be the same again, does it?
No, of course not. But if Arsenal are of the mindset to go and spoil this game, then they're the most competent team in probably Europe at being able to do that. So we need an early City goal probably it'd be great to have a bit of a ding dong, wouldn't it? It probably needs an early City goal for that to happen. You really don't want a kind of a Chelsea Liverpool 2006 sort of scenario with every time these two teams play each other. But the odds favourite with these sort of recent binary score lines. But then it would be, if Arsenal go there and open up and get beat 3-0, we'd be like, that's absolutely ridiculous. What are you doing? They're not better than City yet. I don't think. I think Arsenal are improving year on year, but City aren't. City haven't weakened for me. So I can't see Arteta going there with an open game plan and looking to take City on at their own game. It's just not going to happen. So they're going to try and spoil the game.
I think you can read the recent City-Arsenal matchups out of that 4-1 loss that you mentioned before at the Emirates at the end of 22-23, because I think they went there, they pressed high, they went to take the game to City and they got absolutely munched off it. So, and I think
munched. That's lovely.
As a result, the games that have followed that have just have had that in mind. I think that's the nightmare that sits at the back of Arteta's head. So I think he's always going to come to this game and say, we want a 0-0 draw. We'll take a set piece win like we did it in the North London derby. He's going to do that all day long, because what else do you do if they lose that game? They're already behind in the race where they would want to be, I think. It's a tough one.
The fact that Brentford had joy early against City, Inter have also they had a few moments trying to hit City on the counter. Is there any sort of weakness defensively for City that Arsenal will be looking at in particular, or not really?
I mean, as we've said, City are always going to have a weakness from counter-attacks. That's the way they set up. That's the gamble that they're happy to take. They're going to force the opponent as far away from their own goal as possible and have big spaces to defend. The idea is that they've got the players and the tactics to then be able to make sure that those issues aren't that bad. And we go back to the Inter game, right? A lot of people saying, Inter should have scored a few goals in that game. They put up less than a single expected goal, which, again, some of those scenarios did look quite dangerous, but actually the shots that were taken weren't particularly bad. If you look at the underlying numbers for that game, it suggests that City should have won quite comfortably. So it's one of those ones where I think it looks terrifying a lot of the time, and a lot of people don't understand why they're so happy to allow those spaces to open out. But the reason why they win leagues year on year is because if you play that kind of game 10 times, you win 8 of them, you win 9 of them, and there's the occasional loss to Crystal Palace every once in a while, or a team that you might be surprised to see them losing to. But it's the consistency of those kind of games that make them so dangerous. So yes, there's always the possibility that Man City can lose this kind of game. Arsenal, as we said, perfectly set up to be able to cause some problems from this game. But at the same time, as we said, that was also the case last season, and Arteta didn't even want to risk, if you get caught on the counter yourself off the back of one of your own counter attacks, then again you're in the same problem. And from that point on, if Arsenal go 1-0 up, you'd expect them to just be able to control the game out. So yeah, I think this is why I find these kind of games quite fun, because it's so tense, and it's one mistake made can lead to the game going one way or the other. Most people want to see goals, so I understand that it won't go down very well if that's the case. But these are the games that determine the way that the league is going. So yeah.
If you're not watching on YouTube, John does look genuinely excited. You're like a sort of a tactics minion, just sort of looking very, very excited about this game. I love it. It's good to see. Just a quick word on Rodri.
Sure.
Obviously, we've spoken about Rice and his importance to Arsenal, etc., etc. It seems as if, looking at the minutes, the fact that he started against he started against Inter, they've ramped this up, and you would expect him to slot in and start.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like he's been injured. He's just starting his season slightly later because won the Euros with Spain. I guess the alternative was to run him into the ground from August or whatever onwards. So, we don't want that. I thought he spoke really well actually on the potential strike action. This is a factor in the game. Obviously, with the schedules. Man City have got this ridiculous run now where they play Watford on Tuesday and then Newcastle away.
And that's a tough game, a really tough game.
Yeah, they've got this. I mean, obviously, this is the most important game of the run, but then they've got Watford away Tuesday, Newcastle away Saturday morning, then Slovan Bratislava away the following Tuesday. But Arsenal are at a huge disadvantage here because they played it Thursday night away in Italy, and Man City played the night before at home. I think that's genuinely going to be a really big factor. But yeah, I thought Rodri spoke really well on these issues, which is just going to keep coming up because. If he played in every match he was available for this season for club and country, he'll play 85 games between now and the middle of July, which works out at one every 4 days constantly between now and July. So
it's an interesting debate. It's a hugely interesting debate. You obviously got on one side, they get paid so much they should just
irrelevant.
They should
no.
I understand that on one
side. It's not even an argument.
Just
say. No, but it really annoys me. I keep seeing that all week on Twitter with the replies to Rodri's quotes. They get paid 200, 300 grand a week. So what? The human body can only do so much. It doesn't matter what's in your bank account. We're gonna ruin.
Yeah, but the counter argument to your argument against that is, well, they are only doing that. They are physical specimens and they are designed to play football on a regular basis. So that would be the counter. I don't agree with it. I think that there's too much football. I think there's too many games being scheduled, too many new tournaments, too much competitiveness between all the...
Too many preview shows.
No, but I understand the point, but I think it is still a difficult one to win in terms of the what's the saying, the jury of public opinion. I think you're very difficult. It's a very difficult battle to win, saying we play too much football. Oh well.
Well, we're only talking about a small group of players here. We're not talking about all footballers, are we? We're talking about Man City and Chelsea primarily because they've got this tournament at the end of the season in America. But yeah, I thought you made a really good point on the specifics in terms of how many games he feels he can play at the top level every season, which is sort of around 40, maybe 50 maximum. I think we need to hear more of that really from the players themselves as to what they feel they're physically capable of before their performance levels start to drop off, because then the entertainment is going to suffer and the product is going to suffer.
Yeah, and I know burnout is a big worry for you. Big worry. Right, let's get stuck into some of the other games now. Two big games down at the bottom of the Premier League, both Saturday afternoon. Leicester in 15th, 2 points from 4 against bottom of the lot Everton. No points from 4, back-to-back 3-2 defeats after 2-0 leads. It's well worth reading Paddy Boylan's article, just trying to unpack the footballing situation at Everton at the moment. Tim, in terms of what's happening to them on the pitch, Do you see them being able to turn these things around? Do you see the fact that, yes, they are going 2-0 up in games as something to cling on to? It should be. It should somewhere in their sort of factoring for games. Well, look, we get 2-0 up in games against decent sides, Bournemouth and Aston Villa. We just need to just tinker the bit afterwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely, of course. They're not a team renowned for scoring goals, but they're showing themselves to be capable of that. Calvert-Lewin looks almost like himself to me, which I think is really promising. Don't really see anyone else sort of scoring many goals for them. So I guess the issue for Everton is it's become a mental fragility issue, and we're only in September. But then I guess they've got plenty of time to sort it out, right?
Well. Traditionally, and Paddy points it out that they have slow starts, they rebuild before Christmas, get themselves pretty much sorted, then they sort of peak and trough towards the rest of the season. The other big game down at the bottom, second bottom, Southampton, who beat Everton in the Carabao Cup just to sort of really sort of just worsen the situation. Ashley Young had been brought on as well, then he missed the penalty as well. Southampton up against Ipswich. They're in 17th, 2 points from 4 back-to-back draws against Fulham and Brighton. I've been pretty impressed with Ipswich. The fact that they have started to just pick up points. They seem to be the team that you go, actually, they might be all right.
Yeah, in our preview stuff for the Premier League, I had Ipswich finishing highest out of the 3 promoted sides, because my argument was that they're sort of able to play their style of football as it was in the Championship, in the Premier League, and I think that goes a long way towards, maybe it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to stay up, but they're going to be better placed than a team maybe like South. I mean, the conversation about Southampton is like, can you play football like this?
It's great to see these two styles head to head, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that that probably makes Ipswich the favourites in this one. And I mean, Ipswich finished second in the Championship, and Southampton had to go through in the playoffs. So I guess off the basis of that fact, that you would expect Ipswich to be the slight favourites here. So yeah, it's the playing philosophy derby, isn't it? Like, how should you do it as a promoted side? And I'm sure the narratives will swing one way or the other on the basis of which way this one goes, but it should be a fun one. Yeah,
it's not the tactical battle that everyone is going to be talking about this weekend. That'll be Arteta and Pep, but it's a nice subplot to the weekend, and I'm glad. Yeah, we touched on that as well. Wolves in 18th, 3 defeats out of 4, heading to Villa. Is everything okay there?
No, absolutely not. But they've had statistically the worst start to the season in terms of fixtures, so they knew it was coming. They've had Arsenal, Chelsea, they've had Newcastle. They've got Villa away, they've got Liverpool, they've got Man City coming up, and then they've got Brighton away as well. So they've had a horrific start. But they've won 2 in 17 in all competitions since February. Those were against Burnley and Luton at home, who are both Championship clubs.
Yeah.
So they're in trouble. I think Wolves' kind of take is that they're not worrying about the fact that it's 2 in 17. They're sort of looking at this season's a fresh start. But yeah,
is Gary O'Neill under pressure? I don't. He seems like a nice guy and everything, but I don't want to sort of turn the screw on him. But is the hierarchy there?
Look, I mean, I think he's been dealt a bad hand with the fact that Kilman and Neto were sold in the summer for 90 million and weren't replaced.
Yeah,
they've brought young and experienced players in to replace them. So he's been dealt a bad hand on that front. But tactically, he's got things wrong. He went 4 at the back, even though he's got a weaker defence, which I thought was really silly, and they got walloped 6-2 by Chelsea. So yeah, I have my doubts. He's talking in a very defeatist manner. He's kind of saying, we're fighting against the odds in every game at the moment. We're second favourites for every game. It's sort of like, Nuno's still fresh in the mind at Wolves, where Wolves would take on and beat the big 6 clubs, over the course of a season or two. They beat everybody. So yeah, I am slightly concerned that the squad should not be in the bottom 3 and the team should not be in the bottom 3. They should be comfortably mid-table with what they've got. So he'll need to be there sooner rather than later.
Okay, we'll see. I wish you well. You're
No,
going
you
up
don't.
to. No, I do. Yeah, I do.
Do you? That's in stark contrast.
I've got other teams that I would rather go down in the Premier League, and I'm neutral. So I don't care what you do. Right, Newcastle are third, unbeaten, 3 wins out of 4 rather than 3 defeats in 4 like Wolves. And their results seem to be at odds with their performances, but they should embrace it, says George Culkin. Here he is on the Pod on the Time podcast before heading to Fulham.
Is it must win? No, it is absolutely not must win.
No.
But the longer Newcastle can keep this unbeaten run, the better. And they should be going there full of confidence. if not necessarily in the way that they're playing, then in the knowledge that they have got these reserves within them to dig out results. And that is just as important as playing well.
Another game to look out for this weekend, Tottenham, back-to-back league defeats. They're in 13th up against Brentford, who've won 2, lost 2, and those 2 games were against Liverpool and Manchester City. That's also on Saturday afternoon. Spurs just got past Coventry in the Carabao Cup. Here's James Moore speaking to Danny Kelly post-match on our Spurs podcast, View from the Lane.
It was awful. And we shouldn't pretend that winning a game in that fashion when you played so badly isn't utterly hilarious. I mean, look, if they played incredibly well and gone out, I don't think we'd be kind of crying about the performance, Danny. So let's cling to the positives.
So Spurs can still win the Carabao Cup. And this all fits in with the Ange Postecoglou, I win something in my second season debate. And he has since spoken about what he was talking about after the North London derby. He was a little bit short in that Sky interview saying, no, I always win in my second season. And he has tried to explain it, saying, look, well, I was just flagging a fact. I was just saying a truth. I struggle with the sort of the self-awareness of Ange Postecoglou a little bit. It didn't look great when he said it. Even when he's explaining it, it still doesn't look great. And it sort of feels like he's not quite got a grasp on, he's not got great self-awareness, either on what he's saying and how he's saying it, and also maybe, and I'm not the tactics guy, but on his tactics as well. Is that unfair?
Yeah, I don't think he cares, probably.
Right.
Which is the problem.
And that's fair enough.
And that was great a year ago when they were earning 26 points from 30 at the start of the season. Everyone thought, wow, so refreshing. This guy says what he thinks. And now he's saying what he thinks, and he looks silly because they're not playing very well, and they didn't have a shot against Coventry in the first half and got booed off, and looked like they were heading out and probably deserved to lose that one. He doesn't look great. He's losing it a bit, I think. I mean, he's very, very, very bullish. That's his character. That's his nature. That's not going to change. Neither's the way that his teams play. But yeah, when you're 2 minutes from losing to Coventry, you're going to look a bit silly. So if I was him, I'd be nicer on camera. I think he's coming across as quite rude.
Yeah. And
that doesn't look good. And it looks like you're losing control. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what it looks like. And that the players will 100% feed off that, as well as the fans.
In a sentence, is he losing it tactically?
It's not looking great. I don't know how to say more.
I know that's
less
difficult.
in a sentence, yeah. But the lack of self-awareness, I think, is an interesting one. I don't necessarily agree with that in terms of his post-match comments, but I think the big issue with his tactical approach is that it seems so non-compromise that, when there's clear improvements that can be made, it seems as though you just come out and say, yeah, we're going to make those improvements. And for him, that's, compromising his system in some way.
Hat tip to Nick Miller for saying this prior to Liverpool against Nottingham Forest on last week's show. Have a listen.
Yeah, I think it's certainly not going to be a backs of the wall job that they're going to try and execute. I think they are going to come out and try and play and press high and get after Liverpool and be a bit more open. It should, on paper, suit Liverpool a little bit better. Liverpool off the back of a big win, a confidence boosting win. You would like to think that they'll be straight into it and want to put the record right themselves at Anfield, because you don't want to be going 2 games without a win there.
He flagged the fact that Callum Hudson-Odoi was going to cut in from the left-hand side pretty much and slot past Alisson. It was a good shout, wasn't it? Fair play to him.
8 times last season. Yeah, so I suppose it was coming.
Yeah, so I thought that it was nice to see something that has been flagged on the preview show come to fruition. Liverpool, obviously, they've bounced back since 3-1 Champions League win in Milan, and on our Liverpool podcast Walk On, Andy Jones expects Bournemouth's playing style to suit Liverpool. Are you on the same page as Andy there, John?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bournemouth, they will cause a lot of problems for a lot of the big 6 sides. But I think with Liverpool, they are set up to sort of exploit space, play directly and thrive in chaos. So I think that this is probably one of those ones where it will suit Liverpool. There'll be space for them to exploit, and they've got the players to do it.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on it this weekend. Good week for Manchester United. They beat Southampton last time out in the Premier League, and then they hammered Barnsley in the Carabao Cup 7-0, including 2 for Rashford, 2 for Garnacho. Now on to Crystal Palace. They're yet to win, 2 points from 4. Let's hear from Karlanka on Talk of the Devils.
But I think we are now reaching the point in the season where Garnacho is likely to start games, and Ahmad will then be the plan B. Because I think Rashford and Garnacho, if they're both very, very confident against a team like Palace, who are going to play wing backs, whoever starts against Tyrick Mitchell, you might have some fun there, because at the moment Palace want to send both their wing backs forward, and Mitchell is a good defensive fullback, wing back, however you want to describe it, but isn't the most comfortable going forward. So if you can beat him in a foot race, you're in. So that's the one I'm interested in. Not necessarily who starts on both wings, but who's the one up against Mitchell.
Are we wrong to think that they've taken a step forward after the week that they've had?
They've certainly proven that they would do quite well in the Championship, I think. But they're back to the Premier League this week, I'm afraid. In Palace is a game that they should be looking at and thinking this is another nice fixture for us to keep things going. Palace, I suppose, will be in the opposite side of that equation, and they'll be thinking we really need to start getting some points on the board. So, I think this could be a good fixture. It could be a banana skin for Manchester United, or it could be another comfortable win for them.
We will see on that and all of the games that we previewed this week. Tim, thank you very much indeed. And John, thank you to you as well.
Always my pleasure. Always my pleasure.
Make sure you check out all the podcasts available via The Athletic. Thank you very much for listening, watching on YouTube. Keep your comments and your suggestions coming in. We'll be back on Monday. Have a great weekend.
If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Karlanka, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.